Hold on, what on earth is this? I was taken aback. The words, incompetent middle school graduate, were bolded on my wife Molly's employment ID. The ID was shaking wildly in my palms. My mind was full of anger. Although I was aware that Troy, the director of the department, had often mocked Molly for having just completed middle school, I never thought an adult would act in such a juvenile manner. Who made this? I muttered. Of course, it was Troy, replies Molly. After that, I called. I kept phoning because the person didn't pick up. I made at least 10 calls before I recognized it. They finally picked up on the 11th try. It's me, Isaac. I must admit that I was a little alarmed when I noticed 10 missed calls from you, even though I was unable to answer because I was in a business meeting. Usually before returning the call, don't you? Oh, I see. Isn't this what they call blowing up my phone? Despite my advanced age, I am familiar with some terminology here. I didn't intend to laugh along with the person on the other end, but they did. Rather, my voice was filled with rage. The $634 million contract is off, Mr. Sawyer. I'm closing your business. What? The other voice screamed in surprise. Hold on, wait. What is the purpose of this? So, I launched a counterattack. Isaac Tucker is my name. I'm 30 years old. I live with my wife, who is my age, and we have been married for 5 years. We were married when we were both 25 years old, and her name is Molly. We don't have children, and because we both work, we have a routine. Molly makes supper on weekdays since she gets home earlier, and I handle the meals on the weekends and holidays. When I was 19, I worked part-time at a coffee chain and met Molly. Despite being the same age as me, she had 3 more years of job experience because she had been employed full-time since the age of 16. To my unskilled self, she appeared brilliant. She handled customers with ease, prepared orders, and gave the crew clear instructions. Since she was self-assured, swift, and efficient, she appeared to be an elite worker to anybody observing. I initially thought she was older than me because of this. But when we happened to be leaving work together one day after our shift ended, she remarked nonchalantly, "I'm actually the same age as you, Isaac." I yelled out, "No way," in shock. "Aren't you kidding me?" She pouted because she didn't understand. "What? Do you think I look that old?" The hurt look on her face stuck with me. Of course, I quickly reassured her that wasn't what I meant. Looking back, I never imagined that our awkward first interaction would lead to marriage years later. Anyway, to me, Molly always seemed like a dependable older sister-type figure. I quit that part-time job after about 2 years, but Molly, being a full-time employee, stayed on longer. When we started talking seriously about marriage, Molly hesitated. My job requires working weekends, which means our days off won't match. Maybe I should look for something else? I told her, "Don't worry about me. You should do whatever makes you happy." But a few months before our wedding, she decided to change jobs and became an office worker at a manufacturing company. "Do you regret leaving the coffee shop?" I asked. "Not really. Thinking long term, I figured an office job would be better. Plus, Mr. Sawyer told me during the interview that if I work hard and get promoted, my salary will go up. And honestly, I'm just happy I get weekends off now," she said. I felt a little guilty knowing she made this decision partly for our marriage, but I was relieved she found the new job and I was ready to support her all the way. For a while, she seemed to be doing fine, but one day my department head, Troy, is such a jerk. He keeps bringing up my education, saying things like, "You're just a low education worker." She came home looking exhausted. I knew that even though Molly hadn't gone to high school, she was incredibly capable once she learned something. "Don't let it get to you. What matters isn't your education, it's whether you can actually do the job," I reassured her. Luckily, Molly was naturally cheerful. "Thanks, yeah, you're right. If I work hard and prove myself, they'll have to recognize me," she said, raising her fists in determination. I admired her positivity and dedication all over again. For a while, she didn't complain about work, but then she came to me again. "Isaac, do you think I'm useless?" she asked, looking sad. I was shocked. "Of course not. Who told you that?" "It was Troy," she admitted. I thought to myself, Troy again, feeling a surge of frustration. I despised him for speaking so poorly about my wife. But since I had never met the man myself, I decided to focus on the most important thing, lifting Molly's spirits. "Right in front of me, I know just how capable you are, Molly. It must be tough working under a department head like that, but there are people who will recognize your worth. Just keep believing in yourself and doing your job with confidence." At that, Molly clenched her fists and smiled. "You're right. I always feel bad that you have to cheer me up, but thank you. I won't let it get to me. I'll do my best." Seeing her smile reassured me, but at the same time, my distress toward Troy only grew stronger. As time passed, I noticed Molly looking increasingly exhausted. She used to be the one suggesting, "Hey, there's somewhere I want to go, want to come with me?" and we often went sightseeing or shopping together. But lately, she had been shutting herself in her room, sighing heavily, or not even getting out of bed. Concerned, I suggested, "How about we go eat something delicious?" But she just murmured, "Yeah, but I don't feel like going out today." Eventually, spending weekends alone became my new routine. I told myself that everyone has times like this, that we didn't have to go out all the time. But seeing how our smiles had dwindled, I couldn't help but worry. I kept inviting her out every weekend until finally, she said, "Well, if you insist, maybe I should go out today." So we went shopping downtown. We browsed accessories and clothes in a boutique. When suddenly, Molly's face darkened. "Isaac, let's get out of here," she said. I followed her out of the store, but the moment we stepped outside, a man called out from behind us. "Well, if it isn't Molly, a middle school graduate shopping for new clothes. You should just stick to wearing secondhand junk for life." The words were sharp and cruel. Molly didn't say a word. She just stood there, her expression tense. I immediately had a hunch. I turned to the man and asked, "Are you by any chance from Molly's company?" "Nice to meet you. I'm her husband, Isaac. Thank you for looking after my wife." The man scoffed, barely acknowledging me. Then he turned back to Molly and sneered. "Damn, you sure bagged yourself a fine husband for a middle school graduate." His rude attitude, insulting her right in front of me, made me so angry that I wanted to grab him by the collar. But I held back and forced a bright fake smile. I deliberately responded with words I didn't mean, saying, "Oh, I'm flattered. I wouldn't say I'm impressive at all. In fact, I'm glad that Molly has a boss like you." Then, lowering my voice so he couldn't hear, I added, "A truly remarkable boss who can't even manage a proper greeting." The man frowned in confusion and glared at me. "Let's go, Isaac." "Excuse us," Molly said. With that, she took my hand and led me out of the store. It was then that I realized the rude man from earlier was none other than Troy, Molly's workplace nemesis. He really did have an awful attitude, and I could only imagine how stressful it must be to work with him every day. Thinking about it, I said, "Hey, Molly, if you're not happy at your job, you don't have to stay. I can support us, so you can quit if you want." She smiled and replied, "Thank you, but I don't want to give in so easily. I'll keep trying." Hearing that, I couldn't help but worry if she was pushing herself too hard. "Does Troy always talk to you like that?" I asked, genuinely concerned. She sighed. "He's always bringing up my education, constantly reminding me that I only have a middle school diploma, like it makes me beneath him. But honestly, people assume that if someone didn't finish high school, it must be because they were neglected or just lazy. I get it, and in the end, it's my own fault that I didn't go to high school," she said, with a hint of sadness in her voice. I immediately spoke up, trying to reassure her. Molly, that's not true at all. The reason you didn't go to high school, or rather, couldn't, wasn't your fault. At an age when you should have been focusing on studying and your future, you were helping your family, and because of that, you stepped into the workforce earlier than most people. That's something to be proud of. You've always worked so hard, and I respect you so much. I knew that Molly hadn't gone to high school because her parents divorced when she was in middle school, and she grew up in a single-mother household. Her mother wasn't in good health, and financially things were tough. But it wasn't like her mother had asked her to. Molly had made that decision on her own, choosing to enter the workforce early to help. The fact that she had risen into a managerial position at such a young age was something I had always admired about her. Hearing my words, Molly suddenly burst into tears. I'm sorry, it's just that I can't seem to prove myself at work. I chose to work instead of going to high school because of my family situation, but because of that, I've only caused embarrassment for you and my family. Having someone like me in the family must be humiliating, right? I'm really sorry. She sobbed uncontrollably, tears streaming down her face. I panicked, trying to comfort her. Humiliating? No way. Molly, you're my greatest source of pride. She wiped her tears, took a deep breath, and whispered. I'm sorry. Thank you. Then, she looked up at me with newfound determination and said, I'll keep doing my best. But the more she pushed herself, the more I worried that she was just wearing herself down. There were plenty of other workplaces out there, and given how capable she was, I was sure she could find another job easily. But no matter how many times I encouraged her to change jobs, she always said, no company would hire someone like me, a middle school graduate. I just have to work hard and prove myself here. And so she endured. Months passed, and then one day something great happened. Molly came home with an unusually bright expression. Noticing this right away, I asked, something good happened today, didn't it? With a smile, she said, that obnoxious Troy got transferred, and the new department head, Kai, is a really nice guy. The whole atmosphere at work has improved, and for the first time in a long time, I actually enjoyed my day at work. Hearing that, I felt relieved and genuinely happy for her. That's amazing. It really makes a difference who you work with. I'm so glad Kai is a good person. Thank you, Molly replied. From what she told me, that rude man we ran into while shopping, the one who always looked down on her, was Troy. A man in his 40s and the son of the company president. The president, Casey Sawyer, was a self-made entrepreneur who built the company from the ground up. Now, at 70 years old, he was apparently considering stepping down and passing the role to his son. Troy had been transferred to the New York headquarters, and rumors among employees suggested that the leadership transition was imminent. I'm glad that obnoxious Troy got transferred, but if he's the next president, that doesn't sound good at all, I commented. Molly quickly agreed. Right, if Troy becomes president, it's going to be a nightmare. He's obsessed with academic credentials, so he'll always look down on me. I might as well give up on promotions and raises. When I was hired, Mr. Sawyer told me he values ability over education, which is why I joined in the first place. That's a problem. We need to find a way to keep him from taking over, I muttered, without thinking. But instead of dwelling on it, Molly brightened up. Well, honestly, because of Troy, I was never given proper work anyway. Now that he's gone, I can finally take on real tasks and prove myself. Kai already recognizes my abilities, so I just need to keep pushing forward. Seeing her so determined reassured me, and I wanted to support her. Then, 6 months later, Molly came home with big news. Isaac, guess what? I got a promotion. Both Kai and Mr. Sawyer recognized my work, and starting next month, I'll be promoted to section chief. Seeing my wife so excited, I felt genuinely happy for her. But that happiness didn't last long. She continued, and what she said next shocked me. And I'll be transferring to the headquarters next month. What? It was supposed to be good news, but my immediate reaction was confusion. Molly had a mixed expression, happy, yet troubled. She had been working at a branch office outside the main city, but now she'd be moving to the company's prestigious headquarters in New York, surrounded by skyscrapers. It was definitely a step up, but that means you'll be working where Troy is, right? I voiced my biggest concern. Molly gave me a small nod. Well, it's the headquarters. There are tons of employees. You probably won't have to deal with him much, right? I said, almost trying to convince myself. But she shook her head. Troy is a department head there, and I'll be a section chief in his department, so I'll be working directly under him. She sounded disappointed as she said it. No way. Isn't there any way around this? I really don't think you should have to work with him again, I said, panicking. I had seen how miserable she was because of Troy before, and I couldn't stand the thought of her going through that again. I know, but now that both Kai and Mr. Sawyer have recognized my abilities, I doubt Troy will be able to treat me like before, she said, her eyes filled with determination. She was right. That was how things should be. She had grown both in her skills and confidence. Yeah, you should show Troy just how capable you are. He won't have anything to say after that, I said, genuinely believing in her. But I never could have imagined what would happen just 2 weeks later. On the morning of Molly's first day at headquarters, she was dressed sharply in a gray suit, looking more polished than usual. Before leaving, she smiled at me and said, "From today, I'll be heading out before you. Sorry, I won't be able to make your coffee anymore." Good luck, Molly, I thought to myself as I watched her leave. I didn't care about promotions or raises. I just wanted her to be able to thrive in a place where she could prove her worth. I spent the day worrying about her but went to work as usual. That evening, when I returned home, Molly was already there. "I'm home. Molly, you got back before me. How was your first day?" I asked while sitting down my bag and taking off my jacket. I hadn't looked at her properly yet. There was no response. Maybe she didn't hear me. I stepped closer, about to ask again, then I looked at her face and froze in shock. She was crying. What? What happened, Molly? What's wrong? I panicked. She was crying silently, holding back her sobs. Somehow, it was even more painful to see than if she had been wailing out loud. It was the kind of sadness and frustration that cut deep. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Why are you apologizing?" I asked, confused. She shook her head. "I really am incompetent. I never should have been promoted." Then she started crying again. A bad feeling crept over me. "Did Troy say something to you?" I asked. Molly's quiet sobs grew a little louder. That was all the confirmation I needed. Just when she had finally been able to shine at work, just when she had been recognized for her abilities and promoted, Troy was back to ruin it all. It felt like we were right back where we started. Honestly, I was beginning to think she should give up on the promotion and request to transfer back to her old branch, anything to get away from Troy. "Molly, is there any way you can transfer back to your old branch?" I asked. She shook her head. "No, it's impossible to reverse a personnel transfer like that. And besides, I worked so hard to become a section chief," she answered through her tears. "I understand that, but people like him don't just change overnight. I'm more worried about you getting drained by all of this," I told her. At the same time, I hated the idea of her career being derailed by such a pathetic excuse for a boss. Then Molly finally started talking. "Actually, today I was sent home an hour after I arrived. Troy told me, there's no work for an incompetent person like you, so just go home." Some of the other employees tried to stop him, but he stood there watching me the whole time until I left. Why does he hate me this much? And the worst part was this: she reached into her bag, grabbed a strap that was sticking out, and pulled something up. It looked like an employee ID badge. Normally, an ID like that would have a photo, name, department, and job title, but something caught my eye. There was a large, bold word printed across it, caution. What the hell is this? I leaned in and took a closer look. Lo and behold, Molly's name, written in bold unmistakable letters, were the words, incompetent middle school graduate. My hands trembled as I held the badge. My head filled with rage. I couldn't believe that a workplace full of adults and professionals could stoop to something this childish and disgusting. Who made this? Before I could even finish asking, Molly said. Of course, it was Troy. Of course, it was. There was no one else in that office petty and cruel enough to pull something like this. Molly had earned her promotion fair and square, but Troy didn't even care to acknowledge her skills. He was still hung up on her education, still using it to humiliate her. This wasn't just bullying, it was beyond pathetic. This is blatant workplace harassment. There's no way he's getting away with this, I said. Molly nodded weakly. Yeah, but, since he's Mr. Sawyer's son, no one dares to stand up to him. I understood the logic behind it. Society is like that. There are many unreasonable things that cannot be defied by blood or power. I bit my lip, then a switch flipped in my head. If that's how it is, then I won't hold back. I don't care what you say, Molly. Troy crossed the line, and I'm going to make sure he pays for it. Molly looked at me wide-eyed in surprise. The next moment, I pulled out my phone, scrolled through my contacts, and made a call. The phone rang and rang, no answer. I hung up and immediately called again. I kept calling over and over. By the time I realized it, I had already called 10 times. Finally, on the 11th call, the person on the other end picked up. Isaac, it's me. I was in the middle of a business meeting and couldn't answer, but when I saw 10 missed calls from you, I'll be honest, I was terrified. Normally, people wait a while before calling again. This is what they call blowing up my phone, isn't it? I may be old, but I still know some modern slang. The voice on the other end laughed heartily, completely unaware of my seething rage. I, on the other hand, was furious. Mr. Sawyer, the $634 million contract is off. Your company is finished. What? Wait a minute. What are you talking about? What's going on? He was clearly flustered, but I didn't stop. This isn't sudden. I've been holding back for a long time, but I've had enough. You allowed your son to insult and humiliate my wife. Sure, it was your son who did it, not you, but that doesn't mean you can wash your hands of this. The fact that you let someone like him run free makes you responsible. You made the mistake of pissing me off, so your company is going to take a $634 million hit, and let's be honest, it won't survive. This is the end for you. I let it all out, and damn, it felt good. The person on the phone was none other than Mr. Sawyer, the president of the company where my wife, Molly, worked. And as for how I knew him, well, that was simple. I own my own company, and not just any company, one of the largest business partners of Mr. Sawyer's firm. Recently, my company had started using parts manufactured by his company in our production line. It was a new business relationship, one that I had carefully orchestrated for this very moment. Ever since his disgrace of a son, Troy, started harassing my wife, I had been planning this exact scenario. My company started out small but worked hard to scale up through direct negotiations with Mr. Sawyer. I intentionally made his company dependent on me by doing large-scale transactions. Mr. Sawyer also jumped on this large deal and became heavily dependent on the revenue from my company. Wait, your wife? Are you telling me that Molly with the same last name as you in my company? She's your wife? Mr. Sawyer yelled in shock. That's exactly right. I figured you might have noticed, but let me ask, if you had known, would you have stopped your son from humiliating her? Because I don't think this is about who she is at all. I think it's about basic human decency. And as expected, Mr. Sawyer had no idea what had happened. Today, your son, Troy, gave my wife an ID badge that said, incompetent middle school graduate on it. Then, within an hour of her first day at headquarters, he ordered her to go home, saying there was no work for someone as useless as her. That's a clear compliance violation. When I explained this, Mr. Sawyer said over the phone, "Oh my, no way, no way," and moaned repeatedly. "I deeply apologize. My son's behavior is completely unacceptable. Please forgive me. Just please don't cancel the contract. We've already increased expenditures, expecting the revenue from this deal. If you pull out now, my company will collapse." Mr. Sawyer was desperate, but frankly, I didn't give a damn. Troy had humiliated her, degraded her, and reduced her to tears. That was unforgivable. And letting it happen, raising someone like that and planning to hand over a company to him, made Mr. Sawyer just as guilty in my eyes. "I'll do anything, anything. Just please don't destroy us, I beg you, Isaac. Please." Mr. Sawyer was pleading now, practically groveling. Then, Molly, who had been silent until then, interrupted, wondering if the caller had heard her voice. "Isaac, I want you to let that much go. Mr. Sawyer is not a bad person. It's Troy who was bad. God, my wife was too kind. I fell in love with her all over again in that moment, but I wasn't ready to let this go. I get it, Molly, but as a president myself, let me say this: a leader is responsible for everything their subordinates do. Maybe Mr. Sawyer is a good man, but that doesn't change the fact that this happened under his watch. That's just how it works." When I explained this to Molly, she fell silent, as if thinking for a bit. Then she said, "Isaac, thank you. If it weren't for your actions, I would have been ruined by Troy's harassment. May I make a proposal to Mr. Sawyer?" She said it in a strong tone, and I couldn't refuse her. So I handed her the phone I was using while on a call with Mr. Sawyer. "Mr. Sawyer, this is Molly speaking. I apologize for involving my husband in this, but I had no other choice. The truth is, your employees, including myself, feel powerless against your son because he is your heir. No one dares to speak up, and he knows this. He uses it to his advantage. He especially targets employees with lower academic backgrounds, verbally abusing them and blocking their promotions. I was told during my interview that your company values ability over education. You said that yourself, but that philosophy hasn't been passed down to your son. So I ask you, do you really intend to make him the next president? Please reconsider." Molly spoke clearly and firmly. I couldn't hear what Mr. Sawyer said in response, but the conversation continued for a while. I watched silently as Molly stood her ground. Then, after some time, she handed the phone back to me. "Thank you, Isaac. Mr. Sawyer wants to talk to you again." So, I took the phone. "I owe you both an apology. Molly is absolutely right, and it made me realize my mistake. I was too busy to educate my son, and I did not know what he was doing to his subordinates in the company. I should have been paying more attention, but I let myself believe that Troy was just misunderstood. I ignored the reality of the situation. This is my failure as a father and as a president. I should have never let this happen. I am truly, deeply sorry." Mr. Sawyer's voice was heavy with regret. Then Molly spoke up again. "Isaac, Mr. Sawyer understands now. Please let this go. I still want to work at this company. I just got promoted, so I want to earn my place here. So let's continue doing business under one condition: Troy must be demoted. He can't be next in line for president. All the other employees don't like him, so it's for everyone's sake." I hesitated. It felt like they were ganging up on me, but in the end, I nodded, reminding myself that what was important was Molly's willingness to continue working here. "Fine, Mr. Sawyer, you heard her. Troy is out. Demote him, remove him from the succession plan, and I don't want him anywhere near my wife. If you can promise that, we'll continue doing business." I relayed my message to Mr. Sawyer, but as I said it, another thought crossed my mind. Shouldn't Troy just be fired outright? I was about to suggest it when, before I could even open my mouth, Mr. Sawyer spoke first. I'm firing my son. I finally understand. He's lived his whole life knowing nothing but my company. Even if I demoted him, I don't think he'd change. What he needs is to start over from the ground up in a completely different company. He needs to learn basic professionalism and workplace manners before anything else. Hearing that, I suddenly realized why Molly had defended Mr. Sawyer earlier, and it made me happy. I think that's the right call, not as payback or anything, but honestly, it's for his own good too. Oh, I've got an idea. How about he works as an entry-level employee at my company? I'll train him properly. I grinned at my own genius idea. You really take him in? I would be incredibly grateful. I was worried that no other company would be willing to take in a problematic 40-year-old man who got fired from his own father's company. Thank you, Mr. Sawyer, unexpectedly agreed without hesitation. He said he was grateful, but in reality, I had only made the suggestion half out of a scheme to make Troy, who had harassed my wife, my subordinate, and work him hard. Well, now that it's decided, I'll train him properly and turn him into a man who won't be an embarrassment in society. Mr. Sawyer was lenient with his son, but at his core, he was an honest president. As a way to repay him for listening to my wife's opinion, I felt determined to make sure his son would grow into a capable person, even though he's older than me. And with that, the situation was settled, for now. Molly had a rough first day at headquarters, with Troy giving her a hard time. But from the next day, with a change in department head, things became peaceful. Now she should be able to fully utilize her abilities. Hey, my father told me to come, so here I am. But why the hell do I have to work at this company? Troy suddenly exploded with frustration at me, seemingly unable to properly argue against the order given by his father, the company president. Trying to hold back a laugh at his obvious attempt to act tough, I introduced myself. I'm Isaac Tucker, the president of this company. Starting today, you'll be working here as one of my employees. I look forward to working with you. You calling yourself a president? You're younger than me. I'm Mr. Sawyer's son, the future president. I outrank you. Troy immediately rebelled against me again. Trying not to laugh, I responded. Oh, didn't your father explain everything before you came here? The whole future president thing? That's not happening anymore. At your current state, being president is a far-off dream. Forget being president, you won't even make it to department head, section chief, or even a low-level manager. You're not even fit to be a regular employee. You completely lack basic professional etiquette. What the hell, you bastard? His mental age was that of a grade schooler. No, even worse. Rebelling won't change anything. Think about it. If you're standing here now, it means you've already been fired from your father's company. If I hadn't hired you, you'd be unemployed. Your only work experience is at your dad's company, where you were hated by your subordinates and caused endless problems. No company in the US would hire someone like you, not even for a part-time job. If an employer had to choose, they'd hire a high school or college student over a useless middle-aged guy like you. I laid it all out bluntly. What? Don't mess with me, acting all high and mighty. Troy became even more agitated. I, on the other hand, could barely hold back my laughter. Well, I get that you're full of complaints, so I'll let you vent for today. Say whatever you need to say. And then, I'll introduce you to your trainer. From today onward, you'll listen to her and do exactly as she says. Understood? Seeing how unfazed I was and how I spoke to him as if he were a child, Troy seemed to give up and fell silent. Seeing that, I called in my secret weapon. Erica, I'm counting on you. Yes, Mr. Tucker. The woman who walked in was Erica, an employee who was 1 year younger than me. She was by far the sharpest and most capable employee in our company. Mr. Tucker, is this the guy? The one who disrespected Molly? Erica spoke with clear disdain. That's right, but if you let that thought get to you, you'll just end up resenting him. So please keep a level head and train him well. Mr. Sawyer has done us a favor by helping Molly's career, so let's return the favor by shaping this spoiled child, Troy, into a proper working man. Understood, Mr. Tucker, Erica responded calmly. Disrespected Molly? What the hell are you talking about? Troy shouted, confused. What am I talking about? Don't play dumb. Molly is Molly, the wife of Mr. Tucker, who's standing right in front of you. I heard you insulted her repeatedly at the company. You see, back in our college days, I worked at a coffee shop with both Molly and Mr. Tucker. Molly was the most brilliant and capable senior I had. She was someone I deeply respected, and yet you, a clueless second-generation heir who knows nothing about the real world, had the nerve to insult her. Do you understand why I'm furious? I will never forgive you, so be prepared. Although she became emotional mid-sentence, Erica finished her words in a calm tone. What the hell, how did this even happen? Molly, she's a middle school graduate, isn't she? With such low education, she deserves to be looked down on. As soon as Troy said that, Erica spoke up again. That's right, and as I just told you, she is also the wife of our company president. Were you even listening? You just disrespected the wife of the person who was about to hire you. Do you get that? Watching Erica nearly scream in anger, I almost burst out laughing. Troy, overwhelmed by her intensity, shrank back. I'm sorry, Troy finally apologized. You think it's okay to look down on someone just because they have less education? How ignorant can you be? There are plenty of successful people with little formal education, and on the flip side, there are countless highly educated people who are completely incompetent at their job, just like you, for example, Erica spoke with great intensity. I'm sorry. Please don't be mad, Troy shrank back even more. I secretly praised my own HR sense. Assigning Erica as his trainer was the right choice. All right then, we're heading out to greet our clients right away. First, you'll have to relearn how to properly introduce yourself. You're my junior now, so. But you dare try to act out of line? Yes, ma'am, Troy completely surrendered and obediently followed Erica. I quickly stopped him and called out, Troy, here, take this. Your business cards, make sure you bring them with you. I handed him a simple card that only had his name, no job title. Months passed, and although Troy's poor memory meant he wasn't much of an asset as an entry-level employee, thanks to Erica's training, he at least learned some basic manners. His rebellious attitude toward me also faded. Though reluctant, he finally accepted me as his employer. During the company holiday party, a question I had been meaning to ask came to mind, so I turned to Troy. Troy, I heard you used to look down on all employees without a degree at your old company, but you especially targeted Molly with insults. Why was that? Hearing my question, Troy straightened up and answered. To be honest, I was under a lot of pressure as the president's son, knowing I'd have to take over the company one day. Deep down, I was anxious. Molly was quick to learn and immediately gained favor with my father and other executives when she joined. I was jealous of her, and then one day my father told me, you should learn from Molly and start achieving real results. That frustrated me even more. Then by chance, I saw her resume and realized she had only finished middle school. I was shocked. My father always said he didn't care about academic backgrounds, but I had struggled through college entrance exams and managed to get into college. I wanted that effort to be recognized, but instead, my father kept praising Molly's work. That's when I decided, if I couldn't beat her in performance, I'd look down on her education. I nodded in understanding. Troy, in his childish desire for his father's approval, had seen Molly as a rival and abused his position to torment her. You were truly an idiot, I said bluntly. Troy, as if squeezing it out from deep within, muttered a sincere apology. Watching him, I realized how much he had changed since joining my company, and so time passed. 10 years went by. 7 years ago, my wife and I had a daughter, making us a family of 3. Before giving birth, Molly took maternity leave and then returned to work. However, when our daughter started elementary school, she decided to change careers. Using her years of experience as a coffee shop employee, she opened her own cafe. Even before launching her business, her career as a corporate employee had been remarkable. At Mr. Sawyer's company, she was promoted to section chief 6 months after joining the headquarters. Another 6 months later, she became a department manager. Her rapid rise surprised many, but her skills were undeniable, and everyone in the company fully supported her well-earned promotions. Compared to when Troy was a department manager, things were completely different. Molly was well respected by her subordinates, and the company's revenue was steadily increasing, much to Mr. Sawyer's delight. Even when she went on maternity leave, the entire staff begged her to return as soon as possible. So when she decided to leave the company and open her own cafe, not only Mr. Sawyer but all the employees tried to convince her to stay. In the end, everyone respected her decision, and she left on good terms. Many of her former employees now visit her cafe to take a break from work, further proving how well-liked and respected she was. Watching this, I found myself admiring her even more. As for who replaced Molly as the department manager, I had hoped that Troy, whom I had trained at my company, would reclaim the position. But Mr. Sawyer determined that he still wasn't ready for that level of responsibility. Thanks to Molly, the department had already developed strong talent, so instead of his son, Mr. Sawyer promoted another trusted employee to the role. "I'm sorry, Mr. Tucker, it seemed training wasn't enough to turn Troy into someone Mr. Sawyer could recognize as a leader," Erica apologized to me. But it wasn't her fault. Troy, whose mental age had been shockingly low when he first joined, still had a long way to go before he could truly be management material, and he understood that himself. So, even after 10 years, Troy is still working at my company, continuing to do his best. "Mommy, there's a customer." Our daughter, Luna, had just come back from school and was stopping by Molly's cafe for a snack when she spotted a man at the entrance and called out to her mother. Molly came out from the kitchen, and the man hesitated slightly before ordering. "I'll have an iced coffee and, the strawberry tart, please." "You worked as a department manager at my father's company, raised a child, and now you successfully opened your own cafe. I really respect you. I said a lot of terrible things about your education back then, and for that, I'm truly sorry." "It's fine, Troy. I'm not the type to hold grudges over the past. Since you're here, take your time and relax at the cafe." Troy smiled, looking genuinely happy. After taking a sip of his iced coffee, he smiled again. I watched the scene unfold from the shadows, feeling unexpectedly touched. I couldn't help but think that I could never match Molly. She was warm, broad-minded, and incredibly intelligent. I had asked her multiple times to come work at my company, but her answer was always the same. "If I helped out, I'd just slow you down, Isaac, so I'll pass." I knew she only said that out of excessive modesty, and every time, I thought to myself how completely wrong she was. But now I wonder, maybe she meant that she was so capable that she'd expose all of my weaknesses. Maybe that's what she meant by slowing me down. I don't think I'll ever ask her directly because I'm honestly too scared to hear the answer. But one thing is certain, Molly makes the people around her happy, and I'm grateful that Luna and I are the ones who get to stay close to her in that circle.